to be a part of the mass. Leaning through the windows to be a part of the mass. And Judy lay in the bed as her son, Father John, said mass. After mass was over, she sat up in the bed, and for the next 5 or 6 hours, she rallied. And she had great energy and great strength, and she told stories and she told jokes, and they had great memories, and she laughed and just had a marvelous time. And about 3:30 in the afternoon on that Sunday, the third Sunday of January, she said, I really need to go to sleep. I'm worn out. It's been great being with all of you. She said, but I just want to say one last thing. She said, all the years I've gone to the same parish here in Cheneyville, Louisiana, and for many years to the women's prayer group. First, it was the mom's prayer group, and then it was the grandma's prayer group. But it was the same group of ladies, and we all aged together. And we always said the same prayers every Wednesday night. And at the end of that, we always said something that always puzzled me. She said, we always prayed that we would die a happy death. That we would die a happy death. And I thought to myself, that is a really weird thing to pray for, to die a happy death. But now, as I sit here today, surrounded by all of you, I completely understand. And so it was experiences like that a few years ago that inspired Matthew Kelly and me at Dynamic Catholic to write 2 books on aging and dying, because in the United States, the average person lives to be about 80 years old. So that means that mathematically, when you turn 60 years old, you're 3/4 of the way through your life. Now, maybe you're lucky and you get an overtime period or a bonus period and you get to live past 80 to 90 or 100. But for most of us, we don't. And so the average American lives to be just under 80 years old. So when you turn 60, you've entered the 4th quarter. And so Matthew and I wanted to create a lot of research and a lot of science and a lot of what the church teaches to help people figure out what does it mean to live 4th quarter, to finish your life strongly, and even to die a happy death. Thank you for your patience with my broken voice tonight. So we began to study the science of all this because St. Benedict, in his wisdom many, many years ago, said, keep your death before your eyes daily. And there's a lot of studies, like a study out of the University of Kentucky, that shows if you just pause 30 to 60 seconds each day to remind yourself that you are going to die, you actually live a happier, more satisfied life. And there's actually the most powerful study came out of Yale that said that people in their 4th quarters who have positive beliefs, positive hopes, positive dreams, and positive expectations about their life and about aging and dying actually add 8 years onto their life. Positive beliefs, positive hopes, positive expectations, and positive dreams about their 4th quarter. And what was stunning about that Yale study, that having positive hopes, dreams, expectations, and beliefs about your 4th quarter is actually more powerful than losing weight, cholesterol, or even quitting smoking. And so, in other words, what we believe about aging, dying in the 4th quarter has a very powerful impact on our quality of life, our length of life, and you and I understand on our impact as people of faith. So Matthew and I set out to do about 5 years worth of research. And what I'd like to share with you on that, we studied all the science around aging and dying. We studied the church teaching. We did more than 1,000 one-on-one interviews with people in their 4th quarters, or people who were doctors or nurses assisting people in their later stages of life. And we boiled it down to what we call the 5 keys, 5 secrets to thriving in the 4th quarter of life. And so if you have your red book, just as a cheat sheet, if you look at page 51, the 5 keys are right there. So what I'm sharing with you tonight, you can also find in the book and include that as you reflect on your own 4th quarter. But number 1, the first key to in the 4th quarter is to say yes to God. Say yes to God. Now, all of you obviously understand that very well, because in many ways that really is the first principle and the foundation of the Ignatian exercises, correct? That God's unconditional, unwavering, extravagant love in your life, and it calls for a total response of yourself. And what we found was that people who understand that first principle and foundation and have a robust faith life, have a much stronger, more vibrant, more satisfying fourth quarter. Very simple, because they know who they are, a child of God. They know where they're going, into the presence of God. And most importantly, they know who's going to take them there, our Lord Jesus Christ. You're probably familiar with the great passage from Philippians from the Apostle Paul. It says, our citizenship is in heaven. From it, we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who will transform our lowly body to be like his glorious body by the power that enables him to subject all things to himself. So our citizenship is in heaven. And that fundamentally makes us different from the rest of the world. And it fundamentally makes us approach aging and the fourth quarter and even death in a very different way. So my friend, Father Jim, I've known for many, many years. He's a pastor, a diocesan pastor in St. Louis. And when he first finished seminary and got ordained, he was assigned to be the parochial vicar for an older priest named Father Feldman. And so Father Feldman and Father Jim lived together in the rectory for several years, and Father Feldman really coached and mentored and shaped Father Jim's ministry. And so Father Jim has gone on to be a senior pastor now, or be the pastor of a very large parish there in the diocese. And so 3 or 4 years ago, he's about 4 hours away geographically from Father Feldman. And so they tried to stay in touch. But 3 or 4 years ago, Father Jim, my friend, was walking out of daily mass, and the parish secretary came to him and said, Father Jim, we just got a call. Father Feldman is getting ready to die. And if you want to see him before he dies, you better go now. So Father Jim got in his car, and he drove the 4 hours across the diocese, goes to the other part of the state, and goes into the hospital where Father Feldman is, goes up to the third floor where Father Feldman's room is, and Father Jim walks in, and the bed's made. And Father Jim is just devastated, because this man who's been such an important mentor and role model for him as a priest, that he realized, I got here too late. And so as Father Jim turns to walk out of the hospital room, he looks over at the window, and the window there's a big chair. Sitting in the chair, staring out the window, Feldman. And so Father Jim says, Father Feldman. And Father Feldman says, yes. And he says, what are you doing? Feldman said, I'm just sitting here letting Jesus love me. I'm just sitting here letting Jesus love me. So the first key to thriving in the fourth quarter is to have that deep, deep yes to God that allows us to approach aging and dying in that first principle and foundation of that unconditional love of God that calls for that total response. And it allows us to remember that death is not to be feared, but that our citizenship truly is in heaven. And so we know where we're going, we know who we are, and we know who will take us there. So that's number one. Keep going with me. Number two is to embrace fourth quarter virtue. Embrace fourth quarter virtue. This was the part of our research that surprised us the most in doing these over 1,000 interviews. As we began to map out these people who were thriving in their fourth quarters and what we were learning about them, we began to realize that in over at least 85% and maybe even 90% of the cases, each one of these people had really kind of a virtue that you could really kind of label, this person is unbelievably kind, or this person is remarkably peaceful, or this person is remarkably patient. And we began to realize that for some of us, that in the fourth quarter, we discover a different aspect of who we are. And others of us capitalize on what we already know about ourselves. But when you focus on one single virtue, it begins to produce fruit in all the other virtues. That if you focus on growing in 8 or 9 virtues, you generally don't make a lot of progress. But if you focus on one, it produces fruit in all the other ones. And so if our goal is to indeed become holy, indeed to become virtuous, indeed to become the best version of ourselves, to go into the presence of God when we cross the river into the kingdom, that by embracing a fourth quarter virtue, we really can accelerate that in our fourth quarters. I'll give you a couple of examples. But what really got me going was in my own coaching practice, I've learned that the most powerful question I can ask a man whom I'm coaching is, what do you really want? What do you really? Most men aren't able to answer that question. They start answering the question by all the things that they don't want. But one guy, I asked this a few years ago, I said, what do you really want? He said, that's easy. I want holiness. And I was impressed. I said, okay, well, let's pick a virtue, focus on that virtue, and let's see what begins to happen. And so it accelerates our growth in giving that total response that the Ignatian exercises remind us that God is calling us for that total conversion, that total gift of self back to him. So one of the guys that we interviewed, I'll call him Anthony. He was a hospital administrator in Nashville, in Tennessee. And when we were interviewing him, we said, Anthony, kind of tell us about your life. And he said, well, I was kind of a hard charging, type A driving kind of guy, liked to run hospitals. He said, so I got to be about 56, 58 years old. So my wife got diagnosed with Alzheimer's very early. She was in her late 50s. And so I had to very quickly re-engineer my life to simplify things so that I could care for her, because that was my first love and my first priority, was to love her and to be with her as she disappeared into the arms of dementia and Alzheimer's. He said, so I had to kind of scale myself out of my job, and my life became really, really simple. Again, thanks for your patience. But my life became really, really simple, he said, because really my day became very plain that I needed to make sure that she got fed. I needed to make sure that she was bathed. I needed to make sure that her clothes were clean. I needed to make sure that she got to the doctor. I needed to make sure that she was safe. And so a lot of stuff that used to really be important to me just peeled away. He said, and so for the first 60 years of my life, I was an incredibly impatient person. I was always changing lines in the grocery store, thinking that one was going to go faster than the other. I was always changing lines at traffic lights, thinking that one of the lines was going to move faster. I was very impatient with people. I'd cut them off when they were talking to me. He said, but what happened is that when my life got really simple in caring for my wife, I developed this patience. And all of a sudden, this patience began to sprout out in every aspect of my life. When I'd go to the doctor, and you go to the doctor a lot in the fourth quarter, go to the waiting room, and instead of being impatient, fiddling with my phone or trying to figure out how they could get us in quicker, I would just quietly pray for the other people who were in the waiting room. And when I'm in the grocery store and there's somebody in front of me, instead of thinking, I wish they'd hurry up, I just quietly pray for them. And so this patience that I never knew that I had really began to spring out of me in my fourth quarter, and it's turned out to make me more kind and more loving and more peaceful and more self-controlled. So I won't belabor that for the time, but the fruit of the Spirit. And so, here's a list of 15 virtues. In the back of the red book, there's a list of about 35 or 40 virtues. I simply encourage you to give some thought to what might be the defining virtue of your fourth quarter that creates a deeper level of holiness and a deeper level of conversion, as the Ignatian exercises call us to. So keep going with me. Number 3. So the first one is to say yes to God. The second one is to embrace the fourth quarter virtue. And the third one, give it away. Give it away. And this one, I'll tell you about a rabbi in Poland who was a very famous rabbi, almost like a guru for many, many Jewish people around the world. And people would seek him out and make pilgrimages to go be with him, to learn from him and to study with him. And so there was a woman from the U.S. who set up a pilgrimage to go over there and to meet with him. And she got on his schedule, and she was able to secure an entire hour, which was very precious. And she goes to his apartment. He didn't have an office. Goes to his apartment, knocks on the door. Somebody opens the door, and she walks in, and it's a one-room apartment, bathroom off the side. And the apartment, all it had was a bed, a desk, a chair, and a lamp. And she said, "Rabbi, where's all your stuff?" "Well, where's yours?" "Well, I'm just passing through." We're all just passing through. Citizenship is in heaven. We are pilgrims on our way to heaven. And what the rabbi had discovered was the power, and I'll give you a good verse from Jesus here in just a second, was the power of simplicity. Simplicity leads directly to contentment. Simplicity leads directly to contentment. The more complex our lives get, the more frustrated, the more anxious, and the less peaceful and content we are. And so St. John of the Cross said, part of our challenge is you and I really like comfort, and we really like security. And so we attach ourselves to people, and we attach ourselves to possessions, and we attach ourselves to positions, and we attach ourselves to status, and we attach ourselves to experiences that give us security and comfort. And as John of the Cross says, the more that we do that, the more difficult it is for us to be attached to Jesus, because we get attached to the stuff of this world. And so Jesus, in his own brilliant way, gives us a great verse in Luke 17, verse 33. He says, "Whoever seeks to preserve his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will gain it." In other words, if you want more of your life, give it away. If you want to have more love in your life, give love away. If you want more friendship in your life, give friendship away. Give your friendship away, give your love away, give your relationships away, give your stuff away, give your life away. For people who give their time away, you and I would call that serving. The secular world calls that volunteering, but you and I would call that serving. That's a good New Testament word. That fourth quarter people who serve report a greater quality of life, a greater vitality, and a higher self-esteem. Carnegie Mellon study out of Pittsburgh shows that generosity lowers your blood pressure as well or better than medicine or exercise. It reduces your stress, it reduces depression levels, and increases life expectancy. I got a whole catalog of the studies around generosity of time and money and of friendship and of love. All the scientific studies, Notre Dame put them all together in one big study, like 75 studies, to show that generosity extends your life, gives you a happier life, and it gives you a more peaceful life. Keep going with me. Number four. Number four is to forgive often. Forgive often. So number one, say yes to God. Number two is to embrace a fourth quarter virtue. Number three is to give it away. Number four is to forgive often. In doing those interviews and in doing the work, as Mariana mentioned, I was a Methodist pastor for 20 years before I converted and became Catholic 17 or 18 years ago. It's remarkable how many people enter their fourth quarters and go all the way to their deathbeds, pushing a wheelbarrow full of old grudges, resentments, injuries, and wounds. And it just weighs them down, and it keeps them from ever being able to step into God's future because they're so weighed down pushing the past. And so the forgiveness word, the F word, forgiveness, is perhaps the most powerful word in our language. And one example to give for you tonight, I think about a family that I know that I've worked with over the years. I've changed all their names, but they married couple had three kids, a boy, a girl, and a boy. And over time, the youngest of the three, the youngest boy, became estranged from the family for all kinds of reasons. He no longer spoke to anybody. He no longer went to any kind of family functions. They had no contact with him whatsoever for 8 or 10 years. Well, a couple of years ago, the dad in the family died. And so the middle child, the daughter, we'll call her Heather, called her younger brother, let's call him Brian, left him a voicemail because he didn't answer the phone, of course. He knew it was his sister. Left him a voicemail and said, "Hey, Brian, I want you to know that Dad died. And I want you to know that I love you. And I hope that you'll be a part of grieving Dad with us, and that you'll be a part of the funeral, and that you'll come be with us." 3 days passed. Single thing back. Fourth day, she got an email. They opened an email from her younger brother, Brian, that said, Heather, I got your voicemail that Dad died. Please don't contact me again until Mom dies. And when she dies, just send me an email. Now, I don't want you to think about that moment so much as I want you to think about the 20 years that led up to that moment. The 20 years of the family just being broken and estranged, and all the emotional pain and suffering that the mom and the dad and the older brother and the sister went through, because there was nobody in the family that could figure out a way to bring forgiveness into that family situation. Forgiveness will transform your fourth quarter, and it'll transform your family, and frankly, it'll transform the world. And if anybody should understand that, it's you and me. I mean, as Catholics, we have an entire office, entire sacrament dedicated to this. And Jesus, when he's asked, how many times do I need to forgive? 7. He goes, no, 70 times 7, 490. And so one of the 5 most powerful things you can do for your fourth quarter is to forgive. I won't give you the specific studies, but people who are forgiving take fewer meds, have a higher sleep quality, have a reduction of nausea, fatigue, headaches, and back pain, and have lower stress levels. And this makes sense, right? Because you're not recycling all those painful memories and all those painful wounds and insults in your head. So that's number 4. Now the last one, number 5, and I've got about 4 minutes left, so we will get it done here, is to be open to life. Be open to life. So the 5 keys: number 1, say yes to God. Number 2, embrace the fourth quarter virtue. Number 3, give it away. Number 4, forgive often. Number 5, be open to life. What we found, there's plenty of research to back this up, that showed that the temptation in our fourth quarters as we age is to make our world smaller, to hang out with fewer people, to go to the same places, never try anything new, and to become extreme creatures of habit. That's the natural tendency when we age. And all the research shows the exact opposite way to go, to push back on that, to make new friends, to try new things, to learn a new language, go to a new place, try a different restaurant, to force yourself to continue to expand and experience a bit of the world. And so that is what will lead to a healthier and longer fourth quarter. So I've dubbed Abraham in the book of Genesis the patron saint of the fourth quarter, because you think about Abraham, he was 75 years old. He and Sarah were 75 years old. They got the call from God that said, hey, time to pick up, and I want you to go to a different place. And God doesn't tell him where he's going to go. He just says, go where I tell you to go, and I'll show you when you get there. And you're going to have a kid, and you're going to be the father of many nations. And how long did that promise take? 24 years. Abraham and Sarah leave at age 75, and it's at age 99 that Sarah gives birth to Isaac, and the people of Israel are born. All because Abraham was open to possibilities in the fourth quarter of life. So what I like to describe here is being a personal possibility. What might God do if you're open to what he is up to in the fourth quarter of your life? So a few examples. Mother Teresa was 40 when she began her work in Calcutta. Pablo Picasso was 55 when he began a revolution in the arts. Dom Perignon was 60 when he produced the first glass of champagne. Colonel Sanders was 62 when he created the recipe for what became Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oscar Hammerstein was 64 when he wrote The Sound of Music. Winston Churchill was 65 when he became Britain's prime minister and picked a fight with Hitler. Nelson Mandela was 71 when he was released from prison, and 75 when he was elected president of South Africa. Michelangelo was 72 when he designed the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Benjamin Franklin was 79 when he invented bifocals. I'm very grateful for that. Frank Lloyd Wright was 91 when he finished his work on the Guggenheim Museum. Ichijiro Araya was 100 when he climbed Mount Fuji. And it's predicted that I will be 103 when I win my first argument with my wife. So be open to possibilities, because you don't know what God has in store for you. But as the Yale study showed, when you believe that God is going to be up to something, when you have positive hopes, dreams, and expectations about your fourth quarter, you will have a longer life and you will have a happier life. And best of all, you will die a happy death. So I will close with that, Mariano. And what I would ask is, as I get off the call, I'd ask if you would at your tables to spend a few minutes doing two things. The first thing is to discuss the 5 keys that I just shared with you. Which one of those 5 resonates with you most tonight? Doesn't mean it's the most significant one. Doesn't mean you're going to be attached to it the rest of your days. But tonight, which one kind of strikes your attention and why? So I'd like you to discuss that together as men. And then secondly, if you have time, I know a few of you, and maybe many of you, were able to do exercise 14 in the Red Book ahead of time. If you would look at the bottom of page 66, the question there is, what virtue do you most appreciate in your friends? What virtue do you most appreciate in your friends? So I'd like you to discuss that after you discuss which of the 5 keys connects with you the most tonight, and then which virtue do you most appreciate in your friends. Mariano, that's 30 minutes. We got it done in exactly 30 minutes. Anything else that you want to ask or want me to do?
Alan, thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, I think it was a great presentation. Alan, they haven't heard your conversion story. Can you tell that very quickly?
I don't think you have that microphone on.
Is the microphone on?
No, ask him if he can hear you.
Now you're on. Okay. Alan, can you hear me?
I heard you say conversion story, and then I didn't hear anything after that. I'm sorry.
No. First of all, the guys were thanking you for the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Can you go quickly through your conversion story, just very quickly? Tell them a little bit about what happened.
Sure. I've got a whole book on it, so it's a long story. But the short version is, as Mariana knows, he and I both grew up in Lakeland, Florida, where Florida Southern College is, which is a little Methodist college. So my parents worked in a Methodist college. My uncle was a Methodist pastor. My grandfather was a Methodist pastor. My great-grandfather was a Methodist pastor. My great-great-great-grandfather was a Methodist pastor. So I grew up in a very Methodist setting. And as Mariana mentioned earlier, I started off in the business world, but felt called to go into full-time ministry, so I became a Methodist pastor. But on that journey, I finished seminary at Emory in Atlanta. I went up to Yale to do a PhD in New Testament and ancient Christian history. And in the program with me was a Dominican, a Jesuit, and a Presbyterian. And the Dominican and I became very, very, very close friends, so much so that he's still, other than my wife, my best friend in this world. And it was really through that friendship, Mariano. It took 15 or 20 years. He wasn't trying to make me Catholic. We were just really, really good friends. And I got exposed to Catholicism in all kinds of wonderful ways. Several really powerful experiences, one of which was with a group of cloistered nuns that he and I led a Lenten retreat for when we were students together up in Connecticut. And getting to know those 50 ladies was very, very powerful in my life. But over the course of 15 or 20 years, 3 things really kind of led me into the church. Number one was the authority of the church. I really appreciate the Pope and the magisterium of the church and the clarity that our church has on who we are, what we believe, and what we teach. As a Methodist, we got together every 4 years to vote on virtually everything. So it was like being in the electoral process over and over and over again about what we believed about marriage, what we believed about life. I mean, it was obscene. So that the authority of the church. Second was the unity of the church. I was a pastor, and I live in Georgia, and so there's a Baptist church on every corner, and there's 45,000. Literally, there are 45,000 different brands of Protestant Christianity just in the United States alone. And that really began to break my heart of how divided and fractured we are. And so the unity of the church, Jesus says in the Gospel of John chapter 17, he prays that his people would be perfectly one. And so I really began to feel that draw back to the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And then the third thing that was really kind of the key for me was obviously the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. The longer that I was a pastor preaching every week, and I had the extraordinary privilege of being the pastor of one of the largest Methodist churches in the whole world. It was in suburban Atlanta, and we had about 10,000 members, about 5,000 people on Sunday. And the longer I was a pastor, the more I just kind of grew concerned at how much of their faith resided in me, is that they trusted me and what I had to say and what have you. I was like, no, there's a lot more to this than whether you like Alan or don't like Alan, or you agree with Alan or don't agree with Alan. And so as I really kind of prayed my way through that and wrestled with that, I really came to understand what my Dominican buddy had shared with me, that, as Catholics, for us, it all rides on the Eucharist. And when you study church history and you go all the way back, it's always ridden on the Eucharist. And so instead of the personality or the style of the pastor or the music or what have you, which is generally how it is in Protestantism, for us, it revolves and resides in the altar and what happens in persona Christi of the priest offering us the body and blood of Jesus. So that's the short, condensed version, Mariano.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. Gents, are there any questions? Is there any questions? Alan, thank you so much, and get better from your cold, right? And go Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, go Dreadnoughts. That's right. Yep. Obviously, you and I are the two smartest people in the room since we both went to Lakeland High School. Thank you guys very much. God bless y'all. Very, very proud of the work that y'all do and delighted to hear about your group very, very much. God bless.